Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, the first after the end of the US tour, I want to talk about where things are at transfer-wise as we move into what is essentially the final week of preseason. I would consider next week to be the week leading up to our opening game, which is the first of the Premier League on Friday. So this is it. This is the final week before we're really into the thick of it. And a lot of business to do. So I want to cover the center back situation. I want to cover potential Community Shield lineups, Ugarte, the midfield, and a few other things. Let's just get right into that. I had a quiet weekend myself. I was spending some time off of social media for the most part, outside of watching the game Saturday night, which was an interesting one. I thought that overall United were actually pretty decent in certain areas where we've seen before. The attacking front half of the team has been really good the last few games. Rashford, Sancho, Ahmad, Mason Mount, I thought did well. Probably should have scored. Finishing chances, I'm not so worried about all of that. That will come in time. You can solve that. That's an easier problem. Creating chances, controlling the play, doing all of that, I think is a better indication of how you're performing than whether you're finishing the chances or not. That's, you've got to create the chances to finish them. We've plenty of times when we haven't created any chances to finish in the first place where it doesn't matter if we could finish or not. We also have a big natural striker sitting at home right now. So not super worried about all of that. But the defense, the midfield, definite areas of concern, and that's what I want to address with the updates that I have here. So first we can talk about Matthijs de Ligt, and this is the update I want to give here. My understanding of the situation as of now. United have always had a cap on their valuation of de Ligt. They expected initially that they would be able to get him done for 33 to 35 million pounds. That's about 40 million euros or so up front, with some add-ons on top. And they were potentially willing to reach closer to that 50 million euros mark, but with the add-ons, not as the base fee. The problem is, and always has been with this deal, Bayern's valuation. Obviously, they had their other priorities and things, but even considering now that he is probably the main target at center back, for sure, I would say the main target at center back, as I am told that United had also checked again in on Braithwaite again, but it really doesn't look like there's a deal to be made there. So they seem to be pretty focused on de Ligt right now, barring any major surprises. And the issue continues to be the price, the valuation that Bayern have him at. When they made that joint kind of bid, really what they were looking for was something like 42 to 45 for de Ligt, and then about 15 for Mazraoui. And United are willing to do something more in the range of probably 45 for both, where you're getting 33, 35, 12 to 15 for Mazraoui. And we'll talk about Mazraoui, but that was probably a decent fee for him. But that is the issue. Bayern asking for this 50 million base fee plus add-ons with the expense of the wages on top. It is quite a lot. It's about 10 million more base fee than they wanted to go, given, again, his wages and the fact that they already have Lenny Yoro, who will be back and is a young player who they want to be the future of the club in that position. It is a lot of money. It's a lot of money when they don't have major sales in that area as well to make. Harry Maguire, of course, being more likely to stay at this point in time. That's why my opinion has been that I'm still unsure of this one, and it's mostly because of Bayern. It's not that United aren't trying now, though. Again, I would suggest, as I did before, that for quite a while he was definitely well down below their other options, but they've somewhat run out of time, and of course, as we know, and again, run out of the option of Gerard Braithwaite. So, yeah, I don't know. I only can say from myself, from United's perspective, from the information I have, which is that I don't think they're ever going to reach 50 million euros up front. I think they'd rather not sign anybody than do that. But I could be wrong. That's what I get from United's side. I think it's mostly about Bayern. If Bayern are willing to be a little bit more flexible on this and accept something a bit lower on a base fee, then I think it'll definitely happen. They're expected to make United will be expected to make an offer in the next few days, another offer in the next few days to get something moving here. So I think we'll just have to see how Bayern react to that. That's why I would say, when United were surprised about the bid last week going in and not being accepted, that's what I mean, because they have this cap, and they figured there's no way Bayern are going to be that stubborn, with a player that they apparently just have no use for, don't want, and as an outside of their plans so publicly and so fully. How is it that they're offering, that if you're offering 42 million euros up front, they're not accepting that they're not bending? And I think that's why there was some surprise. And so I just don't know how Bayern are going to react. From United's side, I don't think they'll make a 50 million euros upfront offer. They haven't been willing to, they haven't wanted to, and we've kind of seen they've stuck to their cap. They did with Braithwaite as well, where they really didn't go above that 50 million mark that was originally there. So, 50 million for him. So their valuation of a player is a determining factor. And I think that, again, Barada being the kind of guy who did this for City, we're just not going to just pay it just because. We'll walk away rather than stretching beyond the cap of what we value a player at. And that cap will be different per player. So I'm not sure whether this happens. I'm really not. But that's just my opinion of the situation, my assessment. United are interested. It seems like he's the main focus now. They've done checks again on Braithwaite and really don't feel that there's a deal to be made there right now. Continue to not be a deal to be made there right now, barring any surprises. But they are a little bit surprised that Bayern are not taking the money that they're offering and continuing to insist on an amount that they don't think makes sense given the situation. So we'll see. They should be making another offer in the next few days. I don't expect it to reach 50 million euros base fee. So we'll see how Bayern react to that. And that's what I would say on Ligt. I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50 just because I just don't know what Bayern will do. But that's my best understanding of it. On Wan-Bissaka and Mazraoui, as I can gather it, Wan-Bissaka is still expected to join West Ham. It's pretty close. I've not heard yet of anything of changing to that plan. Mazraoui should be well lined up. I think that deal is quite simple. As I put out last Friday, that the Mazraoui deal was still quite simple. The valuation there was not really a problem. With Wan-Bissaka, given that he's in his final year, there's going to be a mixture of, whatever West Ham pay him, we sell him, some payoffs to him, things like that go on. I talked about that with Fred. So there's still some technical details to sort out there. But this was kind of the one we expected. All right, once United are back from the tour, it should accelerate, in this week and start to move ahead now, because there were reports last week that he had agreed personal terms finally, and the fee wasn't that far off. So this should happen. I mean, this has been close, and it should be quite close now. Mazraoui should be quite close as well. I'd be very surprised if now Wan-Bissaka turned this down, right? He definitely had an inclination at certain points in time to stick and just depart as a free agent, get to pick where he wants to go. But he, as I said before, he was more open to joining West Ham, and then they agreed personal terms. That was the main barrier there. Inter still interested, but for United, that would really mean, and for Inter, I think that would mean they'd have to do a Dumfries swap, and I'm quite sure they'd rather sign Mazraoui at this point in time. I would too, frankly. Yeah, this one should happen. There's nothing. I know it's been a little bit quiet and a little odd in that respect, which may give pause, but this one should happen. I have not heard any reason why it hasn't, that anything has changed from where we were last week, and that is expected to move forward as we got into, as we came back from the tour. On McTominay and Ugarte, a couple of things I want to mention on this, because there's a couple little pieces of info that I was given, but also things that I checked out and wanted to follow up on. One of the things that, as my understanding, is that there, at certain points, McTominay has had doubts about leaving United to join Fulham as an interest earlier in summer and maybe prior, and that was one of the things that dissuaded them at certain points in time from making, continuing to press ahead in terms of an offer. And that was when I've kind of been following, McTominay's situation, as we've sort of spoken about, a lot of it was going to be down to him, what he wanted to do, where he wanted to go, his role, things like that, moving forward. And one of the things that he was willing to do is if United were going to say, yep, we'll give you a bigger contract, then he'd be willing to stay at United. They haven't seemed like they want to do that. They haven't seemed like that's their inclination based on the discussions. And as I said last week, that I continue to maintain is the absolute truth. Ten Hag would be willing to sell him to be able to spend what he needs to and move forward in these other positions, and that continues to be the case. He's had his discussions with the club about where he's at and his role. He is interested in leaving and going to a club where he can have a bigger role. The two major clubs that have been in for him are Fulham and Galatasaray. There were points where he has had some doubts about whether or not to join Fulham. There are other clubs in the Premier League he would have liked to join, but that didn't really materialize. I think at this point, as I understand it, he is more open to Fulham than before, but I just have like a slight twinge of concern if they worry that he's not committed to them or something. But they've made two offers now, so it seems that they've I think that they feel comfortable now. They'd be happy to join them and happy with the role. I think that was part of what was reported in The Athletic as well last week, which is important, is this offering of this starting kind of role in a lot of minutes. A third offer from Fulham is still expected as talks continue to go on between the clubs, and United would probably take something that would be in that range of 25 million at this point in time to allow them to move forward in other areas. McTominay would be very interested in joining Galatasaray, good club, good city, Champions League, good wages. The issue, of course, is that 25 million would be more than a record fee for them, paying that they just don't do. And that is where, that hasn't quite worked out. But when players are nearing the end of their contract, sometimes that's where it gets complicated, is that they can choose, where to go. Say, well, I'm just going to hold out and stay and then walk next year. I don't think that'll happen. Fulham is looking likely, but they need to make a decent third bid this week. And United are expecting it, but we need to see them actually make that now. Once that happens, it should make things a lot simpler on the Ugarte front. He continues to be the main target in the midfield, as I've maintained for feels like ages now. He continues to be the main target in the midfield. There are further discussions with PSG over the next few days and between Jorge Mendes and such as well. When the player returns, which I think is today, as well to PSG, he'll be having discussions with them about the future, and I think at that point in time, it may accelerate things in terms of his departure and what they'd be willing to do. Mendes will be wanting to move him on now. João Neves to PSG is done. He's not in their plans. So another situation where United are looking at it and saying, look, given all of this, there has to be a reasonable deal on the table for this player. There's no way we're paying 70 million, 60 million like we've always said. That's not going to happen. Now, they are interested in a loan and obligation. That is an option that has been put forward. But overall, in sort of the initial look at it, it would be higher to do that loan plus obligation in terms of the loan fee and the obligation next summer than it probably would be to buy this summer in terms of the option that's presented. So that's got to change and get to a better price, I think, or they're not particularly keen on doing that. The problem is McTominay. Once they move McTominay, then it would open up the door, because they need the center back and they need the full back in, and the center back, money is there. They need this McTominay thing to happen in order to be able to make a buy this summer in the midfield of any significance. So, it's a little bit contingent on that. There's other flexible options that could work, but PSG need to come down to some reasonable prices there too. New talks are set to occur, and their stance has been more flexible. So I think that that'll continue. I still have heard practically nothing outside of obviously the basics on these alternative names in the midfield. I've still heard practically nothing yet on saying, we're going to go sign them, like with Sofian Amrabat. I understand he's there as like a backup emergency option. They haven't done anything like to indicate, yes, we're coming in for you. They want to get Ugarte in. And that's what they're working on. And that's where they need something to occur with McTominay. They really do. And, it's interesting because I was looking at some of the comments last week and, as I was kind of tempering things down a little bit in terms of the number of signings and explaining, and I'm surprised and not surprised that so many people are so negative about it, back to calling it Ineos PR when you start saying that it's going to be a bit difficult to sell. It's very funny. There's a lot of people who will sit there and tell you in these things, they know for a fact that PSR isn't a problem. Well, I can tell you for a fact it is. People make a lot of analysis without the information themselves. United were very close to the limit last year, and they will continue to be close depending on what they spend. They're doing all right, but there's a lot of things to invest in, a lot of things that have to get done. They have to sell to buy. They do. That is a reality of the situation. And the problem is with selling is the old deals that exist in place. And you just have to understand that and grasp that. When you have players who are making $150,000 a week that at any other club would be on 80 or 90, it makes it harder to shift them. People don't pay those kinds of wages. Why has it been so difficult to shift Wan-Bissaka? Why has it taken so long? Because of the wages. Because of the deals that they're on, and not just that, the deals and the amortizations too. When a player is paid, when you overpay significantly for players and then you try to move them later, then it makes it potentially unprofitable to move them. And that will actually limit your spending in the short term instead of increasing your spending. And those are the things that they have to avoid. There's a lot of mistakes of the past that they're having to deal with. If you look at what they have dealt with well, they moved the whole Mason Greenwood thing on very quickly. They've moved on youth players instead of having them stick and nothing go on with it. They've done what they could in the situations where they can. They let players go, rather than giving new deals. They haven't been handing out new contracts to Wan-Bissaka, to McTominay, to these players. And, and that's the reality of it. This is where it is. It has nothing to do with Ineos PR. Look at who's running the place now. It's Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, and Dan Ashworth. They're football people. They don't work for Ineos. They work for United. They're hired, appointed by Ineos people who came in. Those are the people making the decisions. Those are the people looking at the finances, understanding it, and saying, this is what we have to do and where we have to go. So, yeah, I trust what they're doing and that they have the best interests at heart, and they're not sitting there saying, well, we don't have the money. And it has nothing to do with owners. Owner investment doesn't change PSR at this point in time. It's not how it works. So these are the realities of the situation. Selling has nothing to do with Ineos. It has to do with Dan Ashworth, Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox, and Eric Ten Hag working together to find solutions. It has nothing to do with the ownership at this point. It's about them. They're the ones doing it. So you have to be smart. Think about it properly, about what's actually gone on over the last 10 years. It's been difficult for United to sell for a long time because of overinflated wages resulting in bad amortization overinflated fees, I should say, that result in bad amortization costs, make it easier to lose money, and secondly, overinflated wages that make it difficult for clubs to get there and make it so United are potentially having to look at payouts. That's why Maguire fell through last year. That's why McTominay fell through. That's some of the challenges with Wan-Bissaka, some of the challenges with Victor Lindelof and others. So that's just the truth, and you have to keep it in mind. But they're doing what they can, and it looks like Wan-Bissaka and Mazraoui, that should happen, and they're getting somewhere with this McTominay thing, and that should result in a midfielder, and we need it. I mean, if I were to summarize the preseason overall, when I look at it, I thought the attack was good, and it's missing a lot of options. Garnacho, Xerxes, and Højlund, who will be back in not that long. But that's a lot of good options up front that United have. I'm pretty happy with the attack. The midfield, Bruno, Mount was, I thought, good this preseason. You're still missing Bruno and Kobbie Mainoo, so you have good options there. At center back, at fullback, Dalot is great. He'll be there. You need that depth. That's why you need Mazraoui. Shaw will be there. We'll talk about the left back in a minute. At center back, Yoro, Lissandro, Maguire, I think all really good players. I understand wanting another one. I do, for sure. I do for sure. But Yoro will be back. And, of course, we haven't had Lissandro all preseason. But if the story of it to me has been the midfield, has been the six. The deep midfielder, that defensive midfielder. It has been, it's so bad to me that I would pretty much lose all hope for the season if we don't replace it, because anything good we're trying to do, I think, will fall apart in the midfield this year if we don't make a signing there, and it has to be a big focus. It still surprises me a little. I understand why you want a center back. I really, really do. But I do also think that if you were to ask me tomorrow, Lissandro and Maguire, you have as center back options with Lindelof on the bench. That's all you've got. And in the midfield, you have Casemiro. Which would you pick? I'd pick those center back options every single day and say, get me a midfielder. 100%. Every single time. Every single day. I would pick that we need a midfielder. Especially because we have Yoro coming back. I would pick that midfielder. I don't think we have a starting option that isn't near disastrous in the midfield. And I wish I wasn't saying this about Casemiro, but it was so bad, and it did nothing to change my mind this preseason. It accentuated my concerns so much, because where there was in other areas I felt calmness, composure, hard work, and organization, I saw the same chaos from him, out of position, unable to track back, and mostly just that his legs just aren't there anymore, and that is concerning. So I'm still kind of surprised they're making center back offers before getting this done, but they may be separate, and I have heard so little on other midfielders that maybe they're just confident they'll get this done, and I think Ugarte will be a really strong shield for the team. So yeah, moving on to left back, not a ton there. They're still interested in potential left back. I know Mazraoui can cover it. Amos has done pretty well, so that evaluation has not necessarily gone yet. He could start in the Community Shield even. Yeah, they're still looking at potentially getting a left back in, but maybe something affordable, something on loan. And I'm told that, Ben Chilwell could be an option there still. Maybe available on loan. I don't totally know, but that was an indication that I was given that it could, I'm not super excited about that. I would take him on loan, though. I think if he was healthy, he's a good player, but I probably wouldn't want to buy him at this point for sure. But on loan isn't terrible. Yes. So moving ahead with that. Let's see, anything else important here? Onto the Community Shield. One of the things I wanted to mention, Harry Maguire is fine. It was 100% a precaution. He is not injured. He will likely be starting the season at center back, at least at this point in time. I mean, it could be Ligt. I'm not sure if he's had a full preseason, but Harry Maguire will be expected to be starting at the Community Shield. So, with the injuries, with the lack of some of the options, we don't know where Lissandro is at. Really, really couldn't afford anything to happen to Harry Maguire. So he is fine. The other interesting part that I wanted to talk about was the striker situation. I was able to ask Ten Hag in his press conference ahead of the Liverpool game, could Jadon Sancho continue in that role at striker, or would Joshua Zirkzee be ready? And the indication he kind of gave was, of course, there are two different points in the preseason, which to me seems a little bit of an indication that maybe Zirkzee they don't know if he'll be ready yet. Of course, 3 more weeks of fitness and playing with the team and being on the tour, Sancho will be physically more ready, more built into the team, even though it's not his natural position. And he mentioned that Sancho or Bruno could be the strikers. And he mentioned that afterwards. And that's why I had asked about that, because This false nine kind of position is something we started last year. Obviously, Bruno played it in the FA Cup final against Man City, where we won. So I think we could continue that potentially into the Community Shield. And then hopefully by the start of the season, I would like to see Xerxes in that position for sure. But that is an option up front, is to continue what we've been seeing, the Rashford, Sancho, Ahmad kind of trio up there, as they're the ones who are ready, who are fit, who have been on the whole tour, who've been playing a lot. And I think that would be a decent one to line up against. I would imagine Bruno will somehow be ready to play. He just always is, right? Kobbie Mainoo may not. He's returned today. Lisandro Martinez today. So maybe, we'd have to go with Casemiro, Collier, and Bruno. I'm not sure there. I don't love that, but I think we could manage. Yeah. So it'll be an interesting lineup. Obviously, the Community Shield, look, it's a friendly. If we lose, it's a trophy. If we win, so whatever happens, we're going to be all right. But I think that, it's an interesting insight into this view of this shifting kind of frontline dynamics, that there's a lot of discussion about, playing players like Sancho, Bruno, and such in there, and why they bought Xerxes to play this false nine role. And with Højlund out a bit longer, we're going to start the season that way. I expected we might anyway, although with Højlund arriving earlier, he was probably more fit to start. It looks better anyway, just with having Ahmad in there instead of just three runners. In my opinion, it looked, even for the brief time we saw Rashford, Højlund, and Ahmad, it looked fantastic. So I'm really happy with that too. But I think the dynamics are all improved by having these mixed profiles and different people in the front line. So, yes. So to wrap things up on all of this, Ligt, we're expected to go back in for him to make another offer. Don't think we'll meet 50 million euros up front, so we're just going to have to see with Bayern. That's the only, I just don't know how they're going to react. Wan-Bissaka moving closer to West Ham. I expect that now that we're back, this should get done pretty quickly now. And Mazraoui should occur pretty soon after that. And I would really expect Wan-Bissaka and Mazraoui to happen this week. It'd be really weird if it didn't. Scott Ugarte could take a little bit longer, perhaps, because we need this offer from Fulham. He's more open to that project at Fulham now, more open to the role being offered now. We need a third bid of around 25 million. Talks have been ongoing. If that occurs, I think for sure then Ugarte gets done. There's been more discussions there. There are more talks with PSG set to go. There's more flexibility in their stance. But, kind of contingent on this sale will open up more options for us to complete that deal. There's still the emergency options available, but as of yet, no indication that we're going for them. On the left back front, still looking at potentially cheap options like loans, like Chilwell. And then in terms of the Community Shield, no really fresh injuries with the main team. Okay, and Harry Maguire's fine. So that's what we've got. Hope that's a good wrap up of things this today. We'll be doing the podcast this week with Phil, among other things. Let me know in your comments below thoughts on everything and the preseason in general leading up to the Community Shield. I'd like to know if you agree with my assessments. I'm not saying we don't need another center back. I'm just saying I would rather get a midfielder and no center back than a center back and no midfielder. That's what I would say. Let me know if you agree. And like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next video.